Okay, well, it looks like things are kind of starting to slow down for admitting people. So I'm going to go ahead and get started a few minutes early since this is recorded and people can go back and watch it if they'd like. So my name is Morgan and I am the program manager for the North Dakota Association of Soil Conservation Districts, or NDASCD for short. I grew up in Pick City, North Dakota before attending Minnesota State University Moorhead, and I obtained my bachelor's degree in communication studies with an emphasis on training and development and a minor in leadership. I began my career with the association in September of 2020, and I'm here today to talk to you guys a little bit about the grant writing process. If you have any questions afterwards, I'm very happy to answer them. I still am pretty new, so if I can't answer any question or answer a question that you have, I will most certainly jot it down and get that answer back to you in an email. So let me pull up my presentation here and we can get started. Hello, everyone. I hope that you're doing well, and I hope that the weather is still just as nice as it is today as I'm recording this video in this presentation for you guys. My name is Morgan Hochsprung. I am the program manager with the North Dakota Association of Soil Conservation Districts. Super excited to be here. Super excited to share a little bit about myself and dive into the grant writing process. So without further ado, how about we get started? So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in North Dakota, specifically more of the western side. Lived on Lake Sakakawea since I was 8 years old and absolutely love it there. That is my favorite place on earth. I attended Minnesota State University Moorhead, and I have a degree in communication studies with an emphasis on training and development and a minor in leadership. I really enjoy hunting and spending time with my friends, my family, and my dog, Dakota. You can see her right here. She's always happy like that, and she's just a great dog. She is a German wire hair pointer, if anybody is wondering. Here's some more pictures of me hunting. That's me and that's me. This is my buck from this year, this last season. This is probably one of my most favorite hunts that I've ever been on for a duck hunting extravaganza. This was a whole weekend long trip and we had results like this that entire weekend. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of that process and make those memories. As you can see, I'm the only girl there, and that doesn't bother me too much. My dad was very influential in my life in getting me going in hunting. I'm an only child, so that's something that I really enjoy doing with my dad. So diving into the grant process, I guess first and foremost, I would like you guys to just sound off in the chat. What do you even know about the grant application process? Have you applied before? Were you awarded a grant? What is the knowledge that you have? And I'll give a few seconds for you guys to sound off in the chat. Okay, and then moving on, does anything scare you about the grant application process? And if so, what is it that scares you? Is it the writing portion? Is it missing a step? Is it obtaining all the information that you need to have to apply? Is it knowing where to begin? You can sound off in the chat again. Next, I just want to chat with you a little bit about what my duties are with the association and how I can assist districts with the grant process. As the program manager with the association, I am able to help districts with the grant writing process. So the grant writing process is also referred to as the proposal or the application in itself. So that is what I am here to help you with. I'm here to help you write it, but it is district's responsibilities to find the grants that they want to apply for, to manage the grants and make sure the tasks are being done, to explain the projects to me so I make sure that I'm not missing any information when I'm writing this grant for you. Really want to make it as simple as possible. And then it's also the district's responsibilities to provide any details that are needed to apply, and we'll get into what those details are later down the road. And then anything else that is specified by the NDASCD at any time. If there's information that we need and that we feel that we need to help you have the most successful grant application, we're going to need that information. And we appreciate your cooperation and hope that we can get you some funding. So there are different types of funders. You can break them into two main categories. There's foundations, and then there's the government. So foundations include private foundations and grant-making public charities. And you can really say that each source that you would go to labels these types of funders differently. There's lots of categories and there's lots of ways that people look at this type of information and try to divide it up. But this is the most simple version that I have found from Candid Learning. So private foundations include families, individuals, or corporations. So an example of that would be the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Ford Foundation, things like that. Grant-making public charities, or commonly referred to as a public foundation, that includes like examples of Save the Children Foundation, for example. Government, that would be all levels of government, from federal to local, so NRCS, Game and Fish, things like that. Now getting into the basics of what you need for your grant application process. So you need your official name of your organization that is registered with the IRS. You need your tax ID. You need your date of incorporation, and you need your DUNS number. And your DUNS number stands for the Data Universal Number System. And the purpose of this is so that the federal government can track how federal money is allocated. So your DUNS number is a unique 9-character number used to identify your organization. You need this for grant applications, and if you don't have one, you need to obtain one. If you don't know if you have one or you need to obtain one, visit the website that I have right here, fedgov.dnb.com, or call this number. Continuing on with the basics, you'll also need your mailing address and your physical address. You'll sometimes need your phone number, your fax number, and occasionally your social media and your websites. I would say that's probably more with foundation grants. They're generally more into what you actually do as far as outreach. And then you need to know your mission and your vision statement. So your mission statement is what you are doing right now to accomplish your vision. And so your mission can change over time, but your vision should not. So for example, the association's vision is to further the widespread application of soil and water practices in North Dakota. And how we do this, or our mission, can change over time as we start to advance in programs and gain more information and knowledge. That is something that can change. You also need to know your fiscal year beginning and end dates, your annual operating budget, your programs offered, so what do you do, and who do you serve, the clients that you serve, so probably producers or landowners. Continuing on with the basics, we're going to chat a little bit about the structure of writing a grant. So there's eight segments that you can break this down into, and I'm going to break each of these down onto their own slide. A lot of professionals label these sections differently, but the content stays the same overall. So you might see a different label if you go to a different training source, and that's okay. The content really does stay the same, so it is okay. A lot of times the outcome and program plan can overlap with what is commonly called the methods section. So just keeping in mind, as long as you're doing your outcome and your program plan and you're then completing your methods, you're not missing your methods. As long as you hit the 8 points, you can make sure that you have everything that you need to have a successful grant. So first and foremost, the executive summary. The executive summary is just a brief overview of the entire proposal. It should be coherent and persuasive and make the reader want to continue reading. Your first paragraph describes your organization and the unique position that your organization is. What makes you different from any other organization that is trying to pursue this grant? The second paragraph is key descriptors of organization / project / program. Again, what do you do? What is the program or the project that you want to implement, and why should they fund it? Third paragraph, what makes the organization, project / program extraordinary? Do you have statistics to back up why this program should be funded? You want to stand out, but you also don't want to provide too much detail where you're feeding them with a fire hose. You do not want them to lose interest and stop reading. So your executive summary is arguably the most important part of the proposal. It's the first page that the reviewers are going to see, so it should be concise. No more than 3 pages, 1 to 3 pages is fine. Be descriptive, but not too descriptive. Keep being persuasive and convincing, and you want the reader to want to keep reading. Introduction to the applicant. So you are introducing yourself. You can think of this as almost your organization's resume. It's an opportunity to establish your organization's credibility. So describe your organization and provide proof that it is strong and credible. What is the history of your organization? What are the major programs that your organization implements or its primary activities? What's your mission and what's your vision? Do you have any collaborations and partnerships? Do you have relevant awards and accreditations? And then how much staff do you have? Include proof that your organization's goals align with the agency's goals. Knowing that you two are on the same wavelength can give you great strides in accomplishing funding for your grant proposal. Next, you're going to describe your problem. So describe the problem that your organization wants to address. Tell the funder what concerns you, why does it matter, and why is this problem happening? What problem and specific needs is your organization trying to take care of in the community? The funder does not care why you need the money. It wants to know why this money will benefit the community. How is this going to benefit the target audience that you are trying to impact. This problem needs to be documented and backed up by statistics. How does this program that you're proposing offer a solution? Sometimes the description of the problem is referred to as the needs statement, and the needs statement needs to be persuasive and offer a credible argument in support of your approach. It needs to make sense. Why is this problem a problem, and how are you going to fix it? Next, we're going to chat about the outcomes section. The outcomes section is sometimes also referred to as the goals and objectives section. Again, all of this content remains the same. Just because it's called something different doesn't mean that you're not hitting a goal or hitting something that you should be talking about. It is okay as long as the content is all there. So for outcomes, describe what you hope to accomplish with this program. List specific measurable outcomes. Examples include who or what is going to improve, and how are you going to measure that improvement, and how long until your desired outcome. The outcomes section often uses words such as increase, decrease, and improve. It is specific, measurable changes in the situation, the change that you will produce through your program. Some other things to note about the outcomes section is how many, who, how much, or by what measure. That, when you keep those terms in mind, that is going to help you really fulfill this outcomes section. Additionally, your outcomes section should closely align and relate to the goals of the grant that you're applying for. So when you're listing these outcomes and looking at the goals of this grant, if they don't align, if they're not related, then maybe you aren't applying for the correct grant. So really make sure that those values align, and that will put you a step ahead to getting this funding. The next section is the program plan / methods section. So what are you going to do to achieve the expected outcomes? Who does what? When and how are they going to do it? Why do you think that these activities will produce the change that you expect? What are the major components of the project or program? Who are your collaborators and their roles? If you're partnering with another district or the NRCS, who are those people? What are the facilities and the equipment that you need to use? Do you have a timeline for the project and program? And additionally, including charts and diagrams to back it up is extremely helpful. The program plan section or the methods section should really convince the reader that your agency knows what it is doing. This section is crucial in establishing your credibility. What activities are you going to do? What is your reasoning for choosing these activities? You know, you want to be able to back up why you chose to do something the way that you're choosing to do it. And you can do that by using supporting evidence, use literature, use similar funded programs that you can see. You can see previous grant winners, and so take a look at those and get some ideas from there. Use statistics to support this. Again, what is your ability to conduct the program and manage it? Do you have experience with other projects? If so, tell them about it. That establishes your credibility. Be prepared to provide info on your staff, their resumes, and if you have consultants on this grant, you need their credibility too. The next section in your grant proposal is your evaluation plan. So how are you going to assess your work? Are the activities happening as planned? And if so, how are you going to track that this progress is happening? Are activities producing the expected outcomes? And how did you determine this? Who will collect the data, when, and how will it be collected? How will the information be analyzed and reported? Make sure with your evaluation plan that you review the funder's requirements and use it as a foundation for designing your evaluation plan. You can approach this evaluation in two ways. You can evaluate your program outcomes and analyze your process. And your approach simply depends on your project and your objectives. Sometimes you can use one, sometimes you can use the other, and a lot of times you can use both. And again, those are evaluating your program outcomes and analyzing your process. Finally, with your evaluation plan, can you answer the question, why are your methods good measures? If you can't back up the reasoning and your plan on why you're going to track these activities this way and how you're going to determine if they're achieving the expected outcomes and why you're collecting the data the way you're collecting it. If you can't back up those methods, your credibility does not stand. Sustained impact. So explain the impact that this project or program will have on the community. Again, your funder cares more about the community than the specific needs of your organization. So how will your organization continue this program beyond the period of the grant funding? And if parts of the program will end, which part and why? If other organizations plan to collaborate after the funding ends with the grant, what are they going to do? And if the program ends when the funding ends, again, explain why the funding will no longer be needed. If you have additional sources of potential support or ways to generate revenue once the funding is over, you need to identify that source. The funder wants to know why they need to fund you, why they need to fund your initiative, and if your program won't continue when the funding ends, they really do need to have an answer as to why it's not needed. Finally, the budget. That is the last section. Provide a very detailed and realistic budget. Where will every dollar provided go? And are there any other resources that partners are going to provide if you have partners? Your budget needs to match your activities. The more detailed, the better. If the funding that you request doesn't correlate with your program plan, this is a huge red flag to funders. Finally, your budget narrative describes what you're going to spend the grant funds on. Again, this is the details. It's an explanation and a justification of the line items and amounts. And then you also justify how you arrived at each line item and the purpose for each line item. This is huge in establishing your credibility with your funder, and that way they can really see where every penny is going. So some questions to ask yourself when getting into this process. How are you going to introduce yourself? How are you going to introduce your organization? So I wouldn't say to a funder, hey, what's up? I'm Morgan. How are you doing today? I work for the North Dakota Association of Soil Conservation Districts. You really want to go into depth. What are your qualifications? What are you going to say? How are you going to be personable but professional? What are you going to do? What's the project that you're wanting to receive funding for? And why does it need to be done? Why is this important? Everyone knows conservation is important, but a lot of people don't know why it needs to continue to be in conversations and why it needs to continue to be funded. Who is going to benefit? In our cases, a lot of times we can argue that even the average Joe would benefit and they wouldn't even know it. So stress that, it's important. How are you going to make this program and how much will it cost? Finally, when and where will the program/project take place? Some more questions to ask yourself. Who is going to do the work? Who's going to make sure that this program is carried out? And what are their credentials? Why are you trusting this program to them? Finally, what are the program or organizational credentials? Why should they fund you? Next, we're going to look at some helpful videos from some resources that I will link later in the presentation.
Generally, the most common mistake we see from applicants in a proposal is not providing the level of detail that we've requested when asking them to submit the proposal. So we provide a checklist when we ask organizations to submit, and we really do need to see all of the pieces of information that we ask for. So generally, we're not getting the level of detail around the financials or the outcomes, for example, that we would need to see.
I think the most common mistake is folks have not really done their homework and have not provided me with the information that we request on our website. And so it's critical that they go to the website first, because we are very specific in the information that we ask for.
For the Ford Foundation, our first contact with a grantee is usually through a letter of inquiry. And I think there are three common mistakes that at least I saw as a program officer. The first is that the grantee really hasn't taken the time to read our website or understand the work of the foundation, understand the kinds of things that we're funding. The second thing is, and this is very common, is that we'll get a request to replace some funding that's been cut either from government or from another funder, and that's just a very unappealing place to start from in a conversation. And then the third is that there's really a lack of distinctiveness in the letter of inquiry, a distinctiveness that speaks to why the organization's approach or the organization itself is different from other kinds of grant seekers.
One of the biggest red flags for me is when a proposal comes to me and it's addressed or it says, "Dear someone else." That's a big red flag that the person really is not paying attention to the grant process, and that they're just sending out these blanket applications and not really targeting.
Generally, when we're reviewing proposals, potential red flags sometimes come up around an organization's financials. So we might see something in an audit that we need to ask further questions about, or it could relate to the outcomes of the program. But usually that comes down to us having a conversation with the organization's leadership to understand those questions better.
The first is that the budget doesn't really match the activities as they're stated in the proposal. The second is that the grantee hasn't really stated clearly the outcomes that are expected from their work. And by outcomes, for us, that's distinct from just an enumeration or re-enumeration of the activities. And then finally, I think oftentimes we have to work with grantees to be clear on the staffing and organizational capacity to support the work. Proposals are most successful, I think, when they're all internally consistent, where the objectives and goals of the proposal match the budget, match the activities, and match the context or context setting of the proposal.
Generally, a proposal stands out from the rest if it's well written and concise, and if it provides us with the level of detail that we need around the organization's program structure, financials, outcomes.
For me, a proposal that stands out is one that is concise and that answers the questions that are on the website, which demonstrates that the person who is submitting the proposal has gone to our website, which I think is critical.
So now let's take a moment to discuss some tips for grant writing. A lot of these tips are things that I've found in my research through the nonprofitready.org, the Grantsmanship Center, and some webinars. So I will discuss what those resources are and highlight them for you guys. But let's just get into those tips real quick. So number one is to think like the funder. If you were in their shoes, what would you want to be seeing? It's a lot easier to to work through a situation when you are understanding where the other person is coming from. The second tip I have is to keep a folder on your computer of the general information that you will need. This includes your DUNS number, your tax ID, your official name with the IRS, all of that information that I listed at the beginning. That's all information that you're going to need with every grant application. So keeping that handy is really going to help your efficiency. Additionally, avoid jargon if you can, and most sources strongly suggest not to use jargon at all. And additionally, avoid informal language. Also, make sure that you're budgeting your time. Take the time to really make sure that this process has gotten every ounce of time and effort that you could allot to it. The more time and effort that you put towards this, the better your application will be, the stronger it will be. Every time you take a break and put a fresh set of eyes on it, it's going to only strengthen your grant proposal. Additionally, keep your grant proposal concise and interesting. Write so that anyone can understand what you mean. That goes into my first point. Grab a friend that works at a coffee shop. Grab a friend that owns a boutique. Grab a friend that works in computers or something that is completely unrelated to what you do, and have them read your proposal. If they can understand what you are proposing, then that is a strong proposal. You never know who is going to be on the other end reading your proposal and reviewing it and deciding if your organization gets money. I think a lot of times in this industry, it's so easy to get caught up in the common terms and understand or think that everyone understands those terms, but oftentimes that's not the case. So really simplify everything that you're saying. Additionally, do your homework. Know what you're going to be proposing in your project, but also know about the organization that you're reaching out to for funding. Research their website, research what they've funded in the past. That will only make it stronger. Some more tips. Review your proposal early and often. The more times you take a break and approach it with a fresh set of eyes, the better it will be. Oftentimes I catch errors after I've let something sit for a few days and come back. I just can't believe how crazy something I wrote sounded, or how I missed a word, or how I over-explained. So really just taking time to visit it often is really going to help you. Again, the proposal should flow and be very easy to read, and this can help you. You can accomplish this by having a third-party proofread for you. So Grammarly is a great source. I love Grammarly. If you go in your web browser, you can search Grammarly and download it, and it's just it's an add-on to your web browser. It's just in there all the time. But if you want to also have human eyes read it, I would just grab a friend and buy them a coffee, or if it's off the work hours, a different beverage, and enjoy reading and proofreading your application. Again, do your research on the funder. What have they funded in the past? And become familiar with the grant process. Build relationships with people that have applied for a grant in the past. Build relationships with people that maybe are reviewing grants. And not only that, participate in trainings and apply for grants. There's no better way to get familiar with the process than to apply. And if you are denied the funds, at least you can look back and really reevaluate maybe why your application was denied. Again, this was said in the video, but do not use blanket applications. And finally, I cannot reiterate this enough, build up relationships. Know the facts of the organization and go to their staff page. You don't have to know someone to get a grant, but it does help you get your foot in the door. So look at the board and staff on their website, and maybe if you don't know somebody, ask your staff if they do. these are some great resources for the grant writing process and for looking for grants. Again, this is not the only list. There are tons and tons of resources out there, but these are some free ones. They all offer baseline free things, and there are other services that you can pay for if you choose to do so. So for training, nonprofitready.org is great. Grants.gov, the Grantsmanship Center, and for grant opportunities, grants.gov, grantwatch.com, northdakota.grantwatch.com, and some state and local organizations. And I'll break all of these down on their own page and show you kind of what they look like. So here we have nonprofitready.org. And here you can see all of these workshops that you can attend, and creating an account with Nonprofit Ready is free. So you can view all of these videos for free. And some of them are videos, some of them are classes, some of them are workshops. And I've always printed off all of the materials that they've given me for me to have on hand and me to make notes on. And I just really like Nonprofit Ready. I think it's a great resource. However, there is the Grantsmanship Center. The Grantsmanship Center does have limited amount of free resources. However, Nonprofit Ready references the Grantsmanship Center a lot in their webinars. So you can see here the Grantsmanship Center has training, webinars, and resources. So I know that it is a very popular resource and that a lot of people rely on it to strengthen their grant skills. This is grants.gov. Again, it's federal, so it's very reliable. You can search for grants on grants.gov, but you can also get resources to become stronger in the grant world. So apply for grants as a team, some grant writing tips. There's lots of trainings on there, and I would just check out their community blog and see what's going on. Grantwatch.com is very similar to the other resources. There's grant training available, but you can also search for grants. You can see here that that's only available for paid subscribers, but I do know that GrantWatch has some free services as well. So this is grantwatch.com again, but just kind of North Dakota based. So again, there's grant training, but this would simply just search grants based out of North Dakota. And I hope that this time has answered some of those questions and maybe taken care of some of those reservations that you had about the grant writing process. However, if you do still have questions, or maybe if I did not answer something, I am available at any time to take care of those for you, and I will take your questions now. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me and learn a little bit about grant writing, and I look forward to hearing the questions that you guys have. Thanks. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining me and for listening to me. I just wanted to take the time to see if you guys had any questions at all. And again, if I feel like maybe I can't give you the best answer, I will most certainly do my research and get back to you whenever I get that answer. Thanks, Tammy. Appreciate that. If any of you would like my links that I referenced or those videos or anything, just let me know, and I will send you an email of all that info. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, I think we can return back to the main session, and that way I can get you guys all separated for the last session of the day. So if you don't have a question, feel free to leave. But I don't want to leave if someone does have a question. And if for any reason you have a question or think of a question later, my contact information is on the NDASCD website, NDASCD.com. So I think most of you have my email as well, but if you don't, my email is on our website. All right, well, I am going to head back to the main session. So see you guys there.